Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're delighted to see everyone here. I'm delighted to see everyone here. And I'd like to give us a special welcome to Her Grace Malati Devi, who is a senior-most devotee in the Krishna Consciousness movement. She doesn't like to be noticed or appreciated, but it's the consequences of doing what you do. Thank you, Malati, for helping to expand the Krishna Consciousness movement all over the world. For those of you who don't know her, she and her husband and a couple of other devotees were the first ones to go to England to meet the Beatles, which they did successfully, and that turned out pretty well. George Harrison, who they befriended there, helped to spread Krishna consciousness in amazing ways, making some recordings that became hits and that were popular. They also stayed at John Lennon's estate for some time while they were getting started in England. And she and her husband at the time, Shyam-Sundar Prabhu, who lives also in our vicinity, are known as the pioneers who helped to get Krishna consciousness started around the world. So, yes, really, thank you very much for coming to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Hare Krishna. And while I'm at it, Kanka Devi, another one of the stalwarts of the Krishna Consciousness movement, who's sitting right next to her, who we're very fortunate to have live in the neighborhood, has been one of the steadiest devotees in our movement for many years. Wealth of information on Krishna consciousness, stellar devotee. Thank you very much, Kanka, for coming. It's so nice to have you here. Hare Krishna. So this is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and if you came to the wrong place, please stay. It's a lot of fun. Here on this ornate seat called the Vasa Asana. Asana means a seat, and Vyasa means one of the incarnations of Krishna, who is the Supreme, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who very deliberately makes the teachings of Krishna consciousness available to the world. And there's a line of teachers that come down from the beginning of creation, according to the Bhagavad-gītā, one of the original books that is well accepted and understood in cultures around the world. And that line of teachers is dedicated to making sure that the teachings of the Bhagavad-gītā are available to people in all cultures of the world. And although the book was written in Sanskrit, it's now translated into hundreds of languages. What's more, in the line of teachers who bring Bhagavad-gītā to light, there's a way that they come to various areas of the world. For instance, our founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, very specifically came to America. He had been asked by his teacher, who was named Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to concentrate on the West, bring the teachings to the West. And there's a mission statement that our founder wrote for himself. He was a consummate planner and strategist for bringing Krishna consciousness to the West. In his mission statement, he writes that Paschatya Deshatarane, he is specifically coming to the West to offer those who are outside the culture of India and don't have the context for it. He's coming to create context for them so they can not only understand the philosophical points of the Bhagavad-gītā, but also take up a practice that would be appropriate. And therefore, part of his title is Acharya. Acharya means behavior, and there's a way in which when you say Acharya, it means one who teaches by his or her example. So this movement was founded by him on the basic principles of the Bhagavad-gītā, and his aim was very specifically to make sure that those who were in the West, outside the context of the culture of the Bhagavad-gītā, could understand it, imbibe it, and take up its practice. And in a little over a decade, he was successful in planting the seeds of this movement in various countries around the world, on every continent, actually. And he did so by presenting a practical way that anyone could introduce and accept, or could accept a simple spiritual practice in their own homes. And that practice is based on a teaching of another appearance of Krishna in the world, who is called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The idea is that the universe, the world, all of us come from a common source. This is one of the tenets of the teachings of the Bhagavad-gītā and other related literatures, which from now on in this talk I'll call the wisdom literatures. There's a phrase in Sanskrit, Janmadyasa Yataha, which means that we all have a common source. Everything comes from one source. And that original source is described as abhigna and swarad. So it's not that our source is a rock, or as sometimes Srila Prabhupada, who's I'm referring to our founder Acharya, that's one of the ways we refer to him as Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is an honorific name, and so is Srila. He used to refer to the various theories of the way everything came into existence. And one of the ways that Brajras Bhavana, see here, had presented recently was the theory of the Big Bang. And he traced out the history of how the idea of the world coming to be from a Big Bang means there was something that exploded. Well, Srila Prabhupada used to refer that as to the chunk theory, that in the beginning there was a chunk, and then somehow or other the chunk exploded. To find out more about the theory, I think you should ask Brajras Bhavana, because is he here? No. He researched it and gave a presentation about it. But the wisdom literatures say that our source is not a chunk. It's not a rock. It's not dull. But it's abhigna, which means fully conscious, just as we are. Look around and see if people here are rocks or if they're conscious. Check. Check and see if you're a rock or if you're conscious. Are you checking or not? No, check somebody near you and see if they're alive. I'll have a beverage while you're checking. See, if I was a chunk or a rock, I couldn't have a beverage. I wouldn't even think of it. I wouldn't have thirst. And if you look at anybody, you'll notice they're looking back at you. This is a sample of our source, abhigna, which means that when you look at somebody here, they'll look back at you. And if you're driving on the 101 freeway and you look out your window at somebody in the car, they'll go, what? Because they're abhigna. They have an awareness. They can respond. And what the wisdom literatures say is we don't come from a chunk, something which is dead. We come from life. And that means consciousness. And one of the ways we can understand the nature of our source is by looking at what emanates from the source. And we emanate from the source, so we can look at ourselves. And we can notice that we're conscious. And if you study consciousness, you'll notice that it has certain characteristics that are different from rocks. And the other feature of the Supreme, besides being conscious, which also means responsive and aware of everything, is swarat, which means completely independent. Although, since I hit the ground running in 1956, that's when I was born, I've been on a tight schedule. And even to this very moment, I've been on a tight schedule since 1956. But God's, or our source, is swarat, means he's not on a tight schedule. He isn't obligated to anything or anyone. And the image of God that some people have as an impersonal, homogeneous energy force is also not viable, according to the wisdom literatures. For logically, everything we are must also be in our source, because we're personal, because we're conscious, because we're responsive, because we feel, because we have relationships. That must also exist within our source. That's good news because we are not satisfied by rocks, although there was a fad for a while to get a pet rock. I personally think that it was made by some parents who didn't want to get their kid a dog. So they came up with the idea of a pet rock. Have you ever heard of pet rocks? You missed that era? Some of you know a lot of Americana. So we're not satisfied by a relationship with a rock, and we want to have a relationship with life, a living person, a personality. So a conclusion which is vital and I dare say unique about the teachings of the Bhagavad-gītā is that our original source is, wait for it, a person. And throughout the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna makes declarative statements. For instance, namam, verse 11, avajananti mam mudha manusham tanamashrita parambhavam vajananto mambhabhuta maheshwaram. Where he says, if you think that God's not a person, then you're mistaken. And I'm being nice in translating the verse. So this movement is based on the idea that we do have an original divine source, and luckily, that original divine source is personal, is a person, an unlimited person. Although we're persons, we have some limitations. And that stands to reason because we're dependent, and that's because we're emanations from our original source. So this movement is based on the principles of Bhagavad-gītā, which guide us towards a personal understanding of the original source from which we all come. And then there's also a way in which, although we're already part of the Supreme, we've been distracted from our real self-interest, which is our relationship with the Supreme. So there's a few simple points that anyone can try out in his or her life to reconnect, which is really the purpose of any religious process. Religio has the word lig in it, which is the same as ligament, that which connects the muscles and the bone, a connecting process. Or we may say yoga. Yoga comes from yuj, which means to connect also. So the surprising fact is that we're already connected. But we've been so distracted, and we've developed an alternative life, just like there's facts and alternative facts. We have our life, and we have an alternative life. And the alternative life doesn't work out so well because it's fraught with a sense of doom, in that it's always changing, everything's slipping out of my hands because I'm not able to grasp anything permanent in this world. Even my own sense of existence is challenged. It's here today, gone tomorrow. So by taking up the process of reestablishing one's awareness of one's relationship with Krishna, one becomes joyful. After all, everyone's looking for a good relationship, right? Say yes. They're not so easy. Even the best of relationships move along somehow or other. My parents were married for 70 years, and then one of them passed on. And I remember at a memorial for my father, there was a poster there that said, "We had a good run." But that's about as long as a good relationship lasts in the material sense. But our relationship with Krishna is eternal. It goes on forever. Now, what's the practice? The practice is that when we get an intervention in our lives through knowledge, then we can set a new course. Destiny can be interrupted by getting knowledge from a higher source. So we advocate in our Krishna Consciousness movement that human beings, number one, we're not advocating, we're just stating that human beings are smart. They're so smart that they can figure out causality. Animals have a harder problem with that. If you put a little paper bird on the end of a string and you drag it around the house all day, your cat, if you have one, will follow you everywhere you go and think that that bird is independently existing. Dogs may be a little smarter, but they'll still keep chasing the ball back and forth. And if you explain causality to a dog, they may not understand. Monkeys do. I have experience because once living on the top floor of the Goshala in Vrindavan, Goshala is a place where cows are kept, so I was living with the cows, and there was a screen door between myself and a big monkey. Some of the monkeys, called Reeses Monkeys, they remind me of bikers, and not the nice kind. The kind who are always looking for trouble. And if you're not careful, they can be quite sinister and dangerous. So there was a rhesus monkey between myself and the screen door that I needed to get in. And I was a little helpless because I was just coming from the shower and I only had a gamcha, and the monkey was threatening me, so I pretended to pick up a rock, and I pretended to throw it at the monkey. He did flinch a little bit, but then he looked at my hand and said, "You don't have anything." And I was thinking that he's smart. I could watch his eyes go, me, the hand, and they're like, "You don't have anything." So I had to retreat. But that's as far as it goes. There's a perceptual horizon that everyone can develop, and according to the wisdom literatures, humans have this ability to extend their perceptual horizon and understand causality, we can see, I have parents, my parents had parents. Okay so far? Yes. If you keep going back and back and back, you're not going to find a rock. And there's a way in which the wisdom literatures say, this is logical. Keep following it back and back and back, and you're going to find that you have a source that's Abhigna and Swarat. And you have a relationship with that source. And one of the other very well-known facts about the Supreme, we'll just say the Supreme for now and not speak of any nomenclature for a particular religious tradition, is that God is all-pervading. If you go to the Romantic period of literature, those who explored the spirituality of the world, if you read Emerson or Thoreau, you'll find a sense of pantheism. Pantheism. Pan means all, and theism means God's everywhere. You see God within everything. There's an energy field we can experience. In some of the indigenous tribes right here in America, those who had the best of it, what I learned in 6th grade, we're here in California, just because of the weather. And they took more time for exploring spirituality, and they had a sense of an all-pervasive spiritual existence. And we look at Rumi or other traditions around the world, you can see the poetry and the teachings, and you'll notice that there are ways in which we naturally experience that there's a higher power, and that higher power is all pervasive. And in the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna mentions this. The 13th chapter is dedicated to explaining how our original source, who's omniscient and omnipresent, is also present within our hearts. And that if we have a sincere desire to develop a relationship with him, then he gives this beautiful metaphor that he lights up a lamp of knowledge. And he also says, I'll guide your path by giving you intelligence to see your way. So, following the tenets of Bhagavad-gītā, and as I mentioned earlier, another avatar or appearance of Krishna in the world who came to give a specific process for this specific age that we're in now, there are a couple of practices. One is to read the Bhagavad-gītā. The Bhagavad-gītā is known as the Vedic intelligence. There's a vast body of knowledge called the Vedas. And they give information about how to live in harmony with nature, how to live longer, how to elevate oneself in the world according to the laws of nature. And then there's a transcendental section called the Upanishads. Is everyone okay? I know I'm going on and on. There's a transcendental section called the Upanishads that advocate one become introspective and look and see who you actually are. And then there's a summary of those Upanishads called the Vedanta Sutra. Is this making you want to read more? Yes. Yeah, okay. Then there's a summary, well, it's not a summary, it's an extended commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. It gets contracted, and then it gets expanded again, and that's called Srimad Bhagavatam. And then there are corollary literatures. One of the most famous, as I've already mentioned 3 times, is the Bhagavad-gītā. And our teacher, who led with the Bhagavad-gītā when he came to the West, called it the Vedic intelligence. So one of the practices of Krishna consciousness is to, as my godbrother told me in New York City just a couple of months ago, his name is Pradyumna, he's always bugging me to continue learning Sanskrit, which I've done in fits and starts. I usually do it to procrastinate when I'm writing a book, and I think, well, maybe I'll learn Sanskrit instead, because it seems easier. And I saw him on the street out in front of one of our centers in New York City called the Bhakti Center, and we greeted one another and just asked how we each asked one another how I asked how he was doing, he asked how I was doing, said fine and fine. And he said, how's the Sanskrit? I said, well, and he already knows my Sanskrit teacher, and he already told him that I hadn't talked to him in a couple months. So he looked at me and he goes, crack a book. And then he walked away. So that's my mantra in my head, crack a book. And there's a way in which we look all around the room and we think, what could preoccupy me? Nowadays, there's one object that especially attracts everyone's attention. I've noticed it. Because if you go to a bus stop, a train stop, an airport, and you look at people waiting for anything, have you had this experience? Do you know where I'm going with this? What are they doing? Looking at a screen, right? And usually their thumb's moving. Ring, ring, ring. This is not yogic samadhi. It's different. It's very different. There is a way in which the human brain can be engaged in such a way that it can touch the web of transcendence. And that's called reading Bhagavad-gītā. It's the Vedic intelligence. So one of our main practices is to read Bhagavad-gītā. And what we claim is, if you read Bhagavad-gītā, you'll have an intervention in your life. Did you ever feel like you needed an intervention?
Yes.
Did you ever feel like you needed rehab?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. In fact, it's trendy nowadays. Where have you been? Rehab. Yeah, I'm rehabbing. And practically living in the world, there's such an assault on the senses from every direction. And you just get swept away by habits. And we need some intervention. We need some rehab. And Bhagavad-gītā has both of those. The intervention of knowledge is quite enticing because the voice of the Bhagavad-gītā is gentle like a friend. In fact, it's a conversation between the great Krishna and his great friend Arjuna. So it's spoken authoritatively. Krishna speaks authoritatively, but there's also a sense that he's speaking to his friend, but there's also another sense because he, Krishna, is the Supreme appearing in a human form, is that he's talking to all of us. And the intervention happens for anyone, can happen for anyone in any language. If you read Bhagavad-gītā, first of all, suspend disbelief. You say, well, I'm an atheist. That's all right. Vijay Prabhu, what do you tell atheists? Give him the microphone, he'll tell you. Vijay Prabhu is the most experienced book distributor on the planet. No one's more experienced than him.
Well, there's a couple of things I say. Which one? I'll just do the one that I've been doing recently. I tell them, so, there's a lot of things you don't know. And they say, all right. And I tell them, well, actually there's billions of things you don't know. And they say, all right. So one of the things you don't know is whether there's a God or not. You haven't a clue. And all right. Usually they say, all right, that's true. So you're not an atheist. You're an agnostic. And they say, all right, okay. And sometimes I take a book after that. So.
And one time you met a Satanist, right?
Yeah.
So what did you say to the Satanist?
This is in Australia, going door to door. And he saw they had the Bhagavad-gītā, and he said, no, I'm not interested. I worship Satan. And I said, well, this book, it's about God. So you should know your enemy. And he said, all right, good point. All right. All right, I'll take one. He gave a nice donation.
See? What did I tell you? That's the result of Vedic intelligence. It's a direct experience. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad-gītā, Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. He said, you want to experience something directly, not theoretically. You don't want it to be ritualistic and I'm doing this because of social obligation. You want to feel it directly. And one of the interventions for anyone in the world is Bhagavad-gītā. And if you suspend disbelief, whether you're a Satanist or an atheist, which doesn't make sense, or an agnostic, just say, for the sake of experiencing whatever we're espousing here, that there could be an intervention, a divine intervention, a nice one. Then read Bhagavad-gītā with an open mind, and you'll see that as smart humans, we're already souls who are extremely subtle, and we can understand subtleties, but we're in human bodies, which are vehicles through which we can understand causality, going all the way back to the beginning. That's our superpower. And if you read Bhagavad-gītā, you'll have that experience. So this is our main book. We offer it in many different languages. And it just so happens, today we had an international call. We were talking to devotees on every continent of the world except for Australia and New Zealand, because we talked to them last night, and it's wrong timing for the morning. And we were counting up how many devotees participated during our recent campaign, which just ended, to distribute Srimad Bhagavatams all over the world. We ended up distributing together about 32,000 sets of Srimad Bhagavatams just recently. Yeah, that's something. Not nothing. But by popular demand, because devotees felt so connected and well engaged for this worthy cause of distributing transcendental literature in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's a whole other topic. And you missed the boat anyway, because Bhadra's over. So you can't have a set of Bhagavatams until next year. So don't bug me about it after. We started what we call our Live to Give, which is a good idea. The more you give, the more you grow. There's a lot in that. But what to give? Giving is an experience when you actually give, not to get something in return, but we give selflessly. You feel bigger. You are bigger. You feel satisfied. Selfless service. According to the teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad-gītā, the best thing to give to anyone is the opportunity to have a knowledge intervention, especially through Bhagavad-gītā. And therefore we began this enterprise to distribute a set number of Bhagavad-gītas around the world every year. See, it's a global project. But here at ISKCON Silicon Valley, we have a penchant for book distribution. And we have that because we see that anyone who gets an opportunity to do it grows personally and also expands their ability to understand the Bhagavad-gītā itself by distributing it to others. And that's also another topic, but I can bring it up at another time. So what we've done, and we started this morning, is the next campaign to distribute Bhagavad-gītas all over the world. And the global goal for this year is 4.2 million Bhagavad-gītas. as Obama says, don't boo, vote, and you don't clap, go out and distribute them. So our goal for 2026, which we've been pursuing for several years now, is to come to a baseline of 5 million Bhagavad-gītas a year. That's a good starting point. Before we think, oh, that's huge, well, in yoga classes they say, don't compare yourself to anyone, but the Gideon's Bible people are way, way ahead. They're distributing multiples of that every year. And they're doing a good job in many different ways. It's a good occupation to distribute knowledge of God. So here at ISKCON Silicon Valley, we'd like to facilitate anyone who would like to see what it's like to take up. You don't have to make a solid vow, but it would be nice if you could have a experiment in your life to say, I'm going to read Bhagavad Gita every day, even if it's one verse in purport. The purport means the explanation of the verse. If you take time to do that out of your busy schedule, then you'll find that you're imbued with a new sense of yourself and your purpose in life. And the second part of it is to facilitate other people getting the Bhagavad Gita. I'll never forget getting a Bhagavad Gita from my friend Sarah Pollock when I was in high school. I still have it. 1972. And it's just a little tiny book with translations in it. And I was so enamored of that book, I read it hundreds of times, all the way through, again and again. I couldn't believe anybody could talk like that. And then I got the advanced version because it had explanations in it from Shambhala Books on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley. As I found out in an advertisement in another publication called the Back to Godhead magazine that it was available, so I went down there and I got it. And it's been a mainstay in my life. I read it every day, and I couldn't think of going a day without reading Bhagavad Gita. It is the intervention that I need every day. So we have made an arrangement here to bring in by ship tens of thousands of copies of Bhagavad Gita. In fact, if you've noticed this tents out in the parking lot, that's the overflow from where they're kept in the middle. The biggest room in our place is in the middle of this temple. It's all stuck full of Bhagavad Gitas. And then the overflow is in the parking lot. And for the world, 4.2 million is the goal. And for here, did you come up with a number? Not yet. We will, though. We'll calculate something. Now, okay, you're going to travel, right? I understand. I'm traveling tomorrow. I'm leaving. But we've come up with an idea. Part of it was inspired by Ritutwaj Swami, because wherever he goes, he carries some books with him. When you walk through an airport, we've identified at least 5 touch points. Forget the TSA, unless you want to accidentally leave a book there. Leave it to chance. But it can be a tedious job being in an airport. They work hard. And when you're going through an airport and you give somebody a Bhagavad Gita, it just gives them a new lease on life. First of all, just getting a gift, and second of all, seeing a book that looks so beautiful and is beautiful when they open it up. So we're recommending, And we've designed a program for everyone who's traveling anywhere, by car, train, boat, plane, that we're going to arrange for you a care package that you can take with you. And you can make up how the number you'd like of books you'd like to take with you, but we'll make a recommendation about the different touch points, the places where you could distribute a book to the people along the way, so that you can plan accordingly. Also plan the weight, make a little room for the Bhagavad-gītā. So it'll make a different travel experience for you. What do you think? Say yes. Okay. Okay, what else, Malini? What other tricks do we have up our sleeve? The other is that, of course, many of us aren't traveling or will be here intermittently, and we have perhaps the most fertile field for distributing the Bhagavad-gītā here in Silicon Valley and beyond. And the way I think of it, after distributing sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Bhagavad-gītā is easy. It's just one book. It's not a whole set of books, 12 cantos. So we'll be facilitating everyone here who would like to participate in distributing as many Bhagavad-gītas as you would like to distribute. We'll give you whatever kind of training you'd like, how to present Bhagavad-gītā, where to present Bhagavad-gītā. We'll facilitate you with Bhagavad-gītas. They're already ready, sitting in the parking lot, ready to go. And whatever other way we can help, I recommend that during this period we take the opportunity to distribute as many Bhagavad-gītas as we can, or more specifically, that we distribute more Bhagavad-gītas this year than we ever have, which is last year's score. That's what I have to say today. And now we'll see if there's any questions or reflections. We had questions yesterday, and it felt like a nice flow. So if you can ask a question, you'll get extra points. Yes. Okay. Tiger's the runner.
Thank you so much for the nice presentation. My question is related to one of the points which you mentioned, that destiny can be interrupted by higher source or higher cause. So my question is, many times we discussed that whether it's destiny or free will, and then we also come to know that they both can be present simultaneously. It's not that it has to be only free will or destiny. But how do we understand that in someone's life, what percentage of activities or actions are determined by free will, or how much is it?
5%. There's a way you can change the equation. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gītā, Raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishayan indriyaisharan atmavasharvadeya atma prasadam adhigacchati. He said, if you can get some knowledge and a practice by which you're able to follow what he calls the regulative principles of freedom, sounds counterintuitive, then you get more freedom. And human life, paradoxically, the more you're able to discipline yourself, the more free you become. Because right now, I'm ruled by my senses. That's why one of the most important books on bhakti starts with this simple admonition, Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam, which says, if you want to advance in yoga, learn how to control your power of speech. And when you're able to do that, then you'll start to notice a freedom from the tyranny of the senses, which are really the masters of this world. There's no more edifying feeling one can have, this is my own statement, than developing one's own ability to control one's senses. And when you know you can do it, you've achieved a modicum of freedom. So it really depends. Beavers aren't free, I'm sorry to tell you. I'm announcing it to the world. I've seen beavers, watched them build dams, and I also saw YouTube where somebody had a beaver as a pet. And when they brought it in the house, the beaver built a dam in the house using whatever it could find, furniture. They're good chewers. They can chew through a tree. So if you take a beaver anywhere, it'll try to build a dam because it's controlled by its senses. But human beings are in a liminal state, means we have an opportunity to avail ourselves to higher knowledge. And when we do that, and we're able to act upon it incrementally, we'll notice that we have incrementally more freedom. Yes?
So if I understood correctly, that depending upon the modes of nature when it's affected by goodness, passion, or ignorance, the amount of free will and destiny differs.
You've been reading the Bhagavad-gītā. Yes. In the mode of goodness, and that's a long topic, but the mode of goodness is the higher mode of nature, which affords one more freedom. When we're in the mode of ignorance, have you ever been in the mode of ignorance? Yes. Where you can't move, can't do anything? Yeah, you can feel it. And when you're able to, and it's not easy to get out of. People in the mode of ignorance, like addictions, overcoming addiction, even if your intelligence said, this is ridiculous, it doesn't mean you can immediately get out of it. You have to take measures to step by step get out of the muck. But when you come a little higher, you think, oh, now I can be more responsible in the mode of passion. In the mode of goodness, there's a way that you can see yourself as different from your body and distinguish that there's a spiritual nature pervading the world and within everyone's heart. So yes, thanks for asking. One more? Okay.
I'm sorry for it. It's a continuation of that. So the attitude that I cannot do anything, this is my destiny, such attitudes, are they because of the effect of mode of ignorance?
Yeah. Yeah. Anapayini Bhakti.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for today's talk. I had a question regarding the same phrase she mentioned, which was destiny can be interrupted by getting knowledge from a higher source. And on the topic of book distribution, I was wondering, what is it that qualifies those receivers to be in touch with spiritual knowledge? Is it chance, their good luck, or in their destiny to receive spiritual knowledge?
It's the discretion of those who go out to present Bhagavad-gītā. Those who go out to present Bhagavad-gītā are generally known as Madhyama Adhikaris, and they have the power of discretion in who to approach. As is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Ishvare tadineshu, Balisheshu dusatacha, Prema Maitri Kapopeksha. That's what it's like meditating when your mind's going. Ya karoti samadhyamaha means there's a level of consciousness in devotees when they come to understand the all-pervasiveness of Krishna, the imperative that souls get an opportunity to come in contact with knowledge. And then when they move about the world, they make this discrimination. They test to see within sometimes a short amount of time, but they look for people who are open. They're called Balisheshu, they're open. So the Madhyamadhikari is a kind of representative of Krishna who goes out in the world and sees how can they give the most opportunity to those who are open for it. And then there's an admonition that don't bug people if they're not into it. Means that if somebody's averse to it, don't make them more averse. Be a kind friend, leave them alone, And therefore, there's a way in which the distribution is based on those who go out to offer it to other people, and determining whether or not it's destiny or chance or good luck becomes more apparent to those who are doing it directly. For instance, sometimes, I remember once in Southern California, we were in Irvine, and we went to a Vietnamese mall. I think it's the most prolific, it's the largest community of Vietnamese people in America, Southern California. And we were going through the mall, and there was a third floor to it, and there was a bunch of shops that were closed. And we went all the way to the last shop. It was the only shop on the third floor that was open. And when we walked in, they were marginally interested, which means they weren't that interested. And nonetheless, they were impressed that we came all the way up the stairs, and that we'd come all the way to their shop, and that we were enthusiastic. So minus all the details, they ended up appreciating, even though they didn't know what it was exactly, and they took it. And when we left, I was thinking and wondering the same thing. What impelled me to go up three floors to the last place at the very end? And why did I, even though they were marginally interested, why did I nudge them in a certain way? And why did they take it? There's a dynamic there that's hard to explain. You kind of have to see it for yourself. It comes through a little bit of realization. And just in general, the idea of destiny, good luck, how justice is meted out in the material world through karma. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gītā, good luck figuring that out. As it's so complicated. When did it start? That's an endless argument everyone has. And Prabhupada said, don't get too entangled in that. Try to see what's in front of you right now and try to understand your opportunity. And in the Bhagavad-gītā, when Krishna talks about the Stita Deer Muni, Munis generally, they try to speculate on everything and figure everything out. And when they do, then somebody smarter comes along and says, no, I got it figured out better than you do. So Stita Deer Muni is somebody who simplifies everything and says, I'll accept an axiomatic truth and an authority that is reasonably, I've reasoned that there is such thing as an authority. I'm not postmodernistic, and there's a way in which I've triangulated to come to the point of understanding why this is the best authority, and I'm accepting it. And then follow that, and more revelation can come as far as how interventions take place, whether it's destiny or good luck and so forth. But the first answer I gave you was as per Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation in the Madhurya Kadambini, which never completely satisfied me. So I didn't expect it to satisfy you either, but I gave it nonetheless out of duty. Hare Krishna. Yes, Vijay Prabhu, please.
There's a statement that you're also familiar with, that Prabhupada puts in a purport, that Krishna, upon seeing the sincere endeavor of the devotee to spread Krishna consciousness, inspires the people in general from within. So if we're sincere, then Krishna inspires people to come and take. So therefore, good sadhana is very, very important.
It's such an important point, and it goes to the fact that it's not mechanical. Consciousness is not mechanistic. It's a different category of energy altogether. So when we interact with other living beings, although they're involved in the material world, they also have a modicum of free will. And where that all comes together, I mean, it's one of the reasons that going out to distribute Bhagavad-gītā, teach Bhagavad-gītā, and so forth is so fascinating. You can't get a better career than that, really. Right? Yes. This is my opinion. Okay, we're running down on time, but I see Mayapur Vihari Prabhu, and I can never resist. Ever since the day he came up to me at japa time and said, hey, I got this idea. Give him a microphone, please. I got this idea to put Bhagavad-gītas in motels. And since then, he's distributed 1.2 million Bhagavad-gītas to motels. Hare Krishna. And that's not nothing. I guarantee it would fill up this room at least. More.
And thank you, Maharaj. That's your mercy, blessings, and empowerment. Maharaj, today you touched upon a very important point for me, and I see a lot of, at least some of the people I know, about the mobile part, the finger going like this, like this. In fact, I would request, Maharaj, once you come back, maybe we should have a session, because not only from a spiritual perspective, material perspective, the amount of time we are spending on device can ruin careers, families, what to talk about spiritual life. For today, if you can at least talk maybe some more things, just so that it goes in my mind, because sometimes it's subtle, oh devotee, okay. And then I realize I went on the internet to do something what was supposed to be seva, but I spent so much time doing, I never even realized that kind of a thing. So thank you for that reminder, Maharaj.
I will quote my exalted godbrother from New York, Pradyumna Prabhu. Crack a book. Okay. In just a few minutes, we're going to have a special offering. And let me just tell you how it came about. Well, one of the exalted leaders of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, who just recently passed away, his name is Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami. And he was an advocate of book distribution. He was a very successful business person, and he's Indian. And actually, he was one of the first and only Indians in the Krishna Consciousness movement. When Krishna Consciousness movement started, it was all Americans, then Canadians, and then Londoners, and then it spread from there around Europe. But there was no Indians. There was only one. That was our founder, Acharya. And then Gopal Krishna Maharaj came, and he was a successful person, highly educated, and he had a very highly placed position in a corporation. Forget which one, PepsiCo or something like that, yeah. And Prabhupada really liked him, and he gave him opportunities to expand his service, and he took it up from Prabhupada that he liked book distribution. So what he did was use his acumen as a business person to set up a display in a very popular bookshop. And he did everything you might do to market a book through a bookshop, including all the collaterals and advertising and everything. And after the campaign was finished, he was disappointed because they hadn't sold many books at all. And he went to Prabhupada and told him, I tried this whole thing and it didn't work. And Prabhupada said, that is because my books are sold by the enthusiasm of my students. And he took that as his main driving force in life, and he always had enthusiasm for distributing books. And in all the places of the world where he had something, he had some position of management, they all flourished in book distribution because of his advocacy and planning. So the last time he came to the United States, he was infirm, and it was obvious that his body was dwindling. Not his enthusiasm, but his body was. And he came for what turned out to be the last tour of the United States, and he was in a place called Naperville. Does anybody know where that is? Besides Sachindra Krishna, who used to live there. And Malati, is that your zone? We're quite familiar with it. So he was there at Naperville, and there was a group of his followers there who were quite enthusiastic and happy to present to him that they had come together in a conference and decided that they would commit themselves to distributing at least 400 sets of Bhagavatams for Bhadra Purnima. With me so far? Yes. Yes, Vaiśeṣika. So he looked up at them, or down at them from the seat, wherever he was, and he said, why not 5,000? Which is a typical response that Prabhupada would have given when his devotees, enthusiastic followers of Prabhupada, would come to him and say, we did this, and Prabhupada said, double it. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj said, they said 400, he said, why not 5,000? And then soon he left that place, he went back, and he left the world, much to the sorrow of all of us who are missing his company even right now. And that instruction, which comes from the spiritual teacher to the students, is called Vani, and it's a real thing. Because if you take it, then what happens is your connection to your teacher is never lost. And what's more, you make great advancement. So the followers of Gopal Krishna Maharaj, in considering that he had said that, we have a little think tank that meets at least once a week for figuring out how to market books around the world. And we are blessed to have some of his disciples as part of that. And we started thinking about, what does it mean, 5,000? So we came up, we branded it, and we made a logo out of it. It's called the GKG 5000. And we actually used as a backdrop the logo for the Indianapolis 500. You don't know what that is. So, okay. So what's happened is, as a subset of the Bhadra Purnima campaign, headed by Gopal Hari and Ranchor and team and devotees all over the world, they came together to enthuse the subsection of devotees everywhere who are followers of Gopal Krishna Maharaj to reach this goal of at least 5,000 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam during the Bhadra campaign. Nanda Vrindavan, is this resonating? That's what happened, right? So tonight, in 2 minutes, they are they here? Malini, tell me what's happening. Is she here? Yeah, I saw her back there for a while, but now she's probably out counting books. There are some representatives of the GKG 5000, and in just a couple of minutes, they're going to make an offering to Prabhupada based on how the community of Gopal Krishna Maharaj disciples around the world had organized, and they'll present the results to Prabhupada. I think they were one short, and they're going up and down the street trying to finish. Malini, what's happening? Tell us what we've won. They're ready. Okay, that's perfect timing then. So I'd like to make a proposal. In about 15 seconds, let's all stand up, and we'll put all the seats away. We'll roll up this rug. It'll take 2 minutes and 32 seconds to do that. And then we'll reconvene around Prabhupada's Vasa Asana, as some of you may have seen. It's a ritual we have here. And the devotees representing, oh, here he is. Very, very good. Thank you for flying in. We'll offer the results of the GKG. And now it's a thing, because it's going to happen every year and go up from there. I'm just saying. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you for coming to the Sunday program. And after that, we're going to have a Hare Krishna dance party, so nobody go home. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.